I had no idea that love could twist into something so sharp, it leaves invisible scars. For 12 straight hours, I clutched that bottle of David's favorite bourbon, like it was proof that our love still meant something. I rehearsed my smile. In airplane windows, imagined the surprise on his face, the kiss, the laughter. I thought I was bringing joy into his world. I thought I was his world. But oh, the silence waiting for me at that cabin. It wasn't peace. It was warning. The snow cracked under my boots as I walked toward the front door. The cabin lights flickered against the twilight like something out of a dream, or maybe a warning. I held my breath, stepped closer, and then froze. Voices. His voice. Not sweet, not warm, laughing, and then words that split my spine. Once, she's gone. The insurance pays out $2 million, and I can finally be with her sister. Just like that. Like I was an obstacle, a joke, a price tag. I didn't make a sound. My silence was my answer. I stood there, heart thudding, bourbon trembling in my hand. He thought I would stay, always so loyal, so blind. But in that moment, something inside me cracked. She cried in silence, that woman I used to be. But this new version of me, she didn't cry. She listened, and she planned. That was the moment betrayal stopped being an abstract fear and became my reality. He broke me first, and maybe that's what saved me. Because standing on that porch, invisible in the shadows, I finally saw him without the mask. The real David, cruel, calculating, and utterly convinced I would never leave. Oh, how wrong he was. What kind of man jokes about his wife disappearing for money? What kind of person plots with someone's own blood to erase them? I felt dizzy, like I'd stepped into someone else's nightmare, but I wasn't a victim anymore. Not in this story. That night became my awakening. That was the night she finally left. Not with rage, but with strategy. I didn't confront him, didn't storm in. That would have been emotional suicide. Instead, I turned back to the snow, one slow breath at a time. I walked away while he still laughed. And every step I took was a step out of the cage he'd built around me. She planned it all. That's how survival begins, with one silent decision to stop playing the fool. I found the messages later, on his laptop, on his phone, screenshots, pictures, deleted chats he thought were gone. They told a whole other story, stories of betrayal, layered in deceit. He wasn't just cheating, he was orchestrating a new life without me. And not just without me, over my dead body, literally. Betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore, it was criminal. And what hurt most, I was nothing to him, after everything, after the years, after the sacrifices. I wasn't even worth a clean break, just a payout, just a punchline, but he never saw it coming. He thought I'd crumble. He didn't know I had it in me to disappear first, to vanish with purpose, to make him wonder, worry, lose sleep. So I left the bourbon on the porch, a quiet symbol, a final gesture, let him think I arrived, then vanished, let the mystery grow. He thought he could erase me, but I was already writing the next chapter. And if I played this right, the truth would come out, on my terms. I didn't know exactly what would come next, but I knew I wasn't going to live afraid, not anymore. What if I disappeared so well, so completely, that he'd think I was really gone? What if revenge could be slow, poetic, and invisible? It's funny how you can give someone everything, your time, your loyalty, your money, and still be treated like a placeholder in their story. I used to wear my sacrifices like medals. I paid David's debts when the banks wouldn't. I funded his dream when no one else believed in it. I kept quiet when my parents warned me. I said love would be enough, but I was deceived. What I thought was partnership was performance. Looking back, I see how slowly it all happened. First, it was the little lies, receipts that didn't add up, weekends where his phone was always dead. Then came the emotional distance, the strange tension around my sister. I chalked it up to stress, but deep down I ignored the truth because I wasn't ready to see it. He betrayed me, but worse, I betrayed myself by staying blind. I can't forget that feeling on the flight back. I didn't cry, not yet. There's a numbness that hits you when the truth is too big to process all at once. I looked out the window, watching clouds blur beneath me, thinking, what now? But somewhere in that stillness, a new voice whispered, she finally left. Not just physically, emotionally, mentally. I started packing up my soul. Costa Rica wasn't planned. It was instinct. I needed distance, quiet, anonymity, somewhere I could disappear without question. I booked a one-way ticket under my maiden name. I left everything behind. No forwarding address, no note, no closure. My silence was my answer. Let him wonder if I was dead. Let the fear creep in. I rented a room in a sleepy beach town where nobody knew my name. It smelled like salt and mangoes, and fresh beginnings. I unplugged. I deleted social media. I walked barefoot to the market every morning. The locals called me La Sombra, the shadow, and for once, that didn't scare me. Hiding felt holy. It's strange how peace can feel like rebellion. I started sketching again, something I hadn't done in years. I'd forgotten what it felt like to create without pressure, without purpose, just to feel my hands move. Miguel, a local artist, noticed. He'd sit with me, silent, letting me rediscover myself through colors and lines. He never asked questions. He just saw me. There was a woman named Sophia who owned the cafe where I'd go every evening. Wise eyes, tired smile. One night, she said, sometimes we have to disappear to find the part of us they tried to kill. I didn't answer, but her words wrapped around me like armor. Maybe he broke me first, but piece by piece, I was putting myself back together. Every night I asked myself, what did I miss? When did he stop loving me? Or did he ever? I was nothing to him. That truth burned, but it also cleared the fog. It made room for something else. Clarity, power, and a quiet kind of revenge. The kind that doesn't scream, the kind that waits. I realized in Costa Rica that I wasn't running. I was rebuilding. The version of me who endured his manipulation. She was gone. In her place stood someone else, someone who would expose him eventually. But first, she would become untraceable. She would rise from the ashes without a single match. And maybe, just maybe, the next step wasn't about confronting him yet. Maybe it was about building a life so solid, so full of peace, that his chaos could never reach me again. But even as I healed, I knew this story wasn't over, because he never saw it coming, and soon I'd make sure he knew what it felt like to lose. There's a power in becoming invisible, especially when everyone thought they had you figured out. Back in the States, I was the devoted wife, the loyal partner, the woman who would never leave. He thought I would stay. That was his first mistake. In Costa Rica, I became a ghost on purpose. Every move I made was intentional, strategic, like a woman planning her own resurrection. I changed everything: my hair, my routine, my name. I left no digital trace, no emails, no calls, no credit card activity. I paid in cash. I avoided cameras. If someone ever tried to track me, they'd hit a wall of silence. I wasn't just running, I was erasing. She planned it all. And the beauty of it? David didn't even know he was losing me until I was already gone. I rented a tiny bungalow on the edge of a cliff. From my porch, I could see the ocean crash against black rocks below. Every morning, I wrote in a journal, pouring out the lies I'd swallowed for years. I wrote until my hand cramped, until the page blurred with tears. She cried in silence, not because she was weak, but because silence was the only thing she could still control. Miguel helped more than he knew. He didn't pry. He simply offered space, color, and gentle company. Through painting, I began telling my story, without words. Every brushstroke felt like defiance. Every canvas was a wound turned into art. When I showed him a piece, he said softly, "This is pain with purpose." And I nodded, because the truth came out, even when I didn't speak. There's something primal about healing in nature. The sun on my skin, the smell of wet earth, the sound of howler monkeys echoing through trees. It all reminded me I was still alive, that I wasn't just a victim. I was a woman reclaiming her power in the middle of nowhere. A woman whose quiet revenge was survival, pure, undeniable, fierce. At night, I'd sit by candlelight and reread his old texts, just to remind myself of who he really was, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the false promises. And then I'd open the folder, the one where I kept copies of everything I'd found. I found the messages, the flirty ones to my sister, the ones mocking me behind my back. He didn't know I had them, but soon, so I showed him the proof. I wasn't ready to return, not yet, but I was ready to watch. I created a fake account to quietly monitor news back home. I saw the whispers begin, my friends asking where I'd gone, his coworkers posting cryptic comments, and that's when it started. Nobody believed her. Not when she claimed I ran away, not when she swore she didn't know anything. His lies were unraveling, thread by thread, and in the center of it all, David, lost, panicking. He looked thinner in the photos, dark circles under his eyes. I imagined the guilt crawling through him, or maybe just the fear of being caught. Either way, he was unraveling without me, and I was blooming without him. The irony, delicious. But what truly shifted everything was the moment I stopped seeing myself as broken. Yes, he broke me first, but healing was mine. Rebirth was mine. Every choice I made in hiding was a declaration. I am not yours to destroy. I am my own. And just when I started to feel whole again, a message arrived. From someone I never expected. From someone who knew too much. And with it came a truth so twisted, it made everything before it feel like just the beginning. The message came at 2:13 a.m. I was half asleep, lulled by the sound of rain on my tin roof, when my phone buzzed. It was Rebecca, David's sister. We hadn't spoken in almost a year, not since the wedding where she gave that awkward toast about loyalty. So when I saw her name, my stomach clenched. I knew this wasn't small talk. I opened it, and everything changed. "Are you safe?" she asked. Not "how are you?" Not "where are you?" but "are you safe?" I sat up, heart pounding. She said men were showing up at David's office, threatening him, looking for money, and worse, threatening her kids. She was scared, and for the first time, not defending him. That alone told me something was deeply wrong. Something bigger than betrayal was unfolding. She told me he'd taken out loans, huge ones, with fake collateral, that he was gambling online, that there were whispers about a forged insurance policy. My stomach turned. He never saw it coming, that I'd vanish and take the truth with me. But now the truth was clawing its way to the surface, dragging more victims down with it. Rebecca didn't even know the half of it. She begged me not to call the police, said they'd all go down with him if I did. I almost laughed. He betrayed me, and now I was supposed to protect him. But I didn't hang up. I listened, because what she said next made my blood run cold. He'd been talking about the policy again, the one he swore he never took out, the $2 million one, with my name on it. I remembered the night I overheard him, his voice saying, if she vanished, I could move on. Back then, it sounded like a sick joke. Now, it felt like a warning I barely escaped. She finally left, and thank God she did. Or this story would have ended with headlines and body bags. Rebecca swore she didn't know, swore she believed I was just emotional, but now she was scared too, and nobody believed her. So I made a decision. I told her I'd help, but only on my terms. I wired the money she needed, anonymously, enough to keep her kids safe, enough to buy her silence. She cried when the funds cleared. My silence was my answer. I wasn't doing it for him. I did it for the children, for the innocent, for the girl I used to be, before he broke me first. And I set conditions. David was to go to rehab. Rebecca had to move, and no one could ever mention my name. I was done being the one they leaned on and lied to. From now on, I would control the narrative. And when she agreed, something in me settled. I realized this wasn't about pain anymore. This was about power, quiet, calculated, untraceable revenge. But before we ended the call, she whispered something I'll never forget. Something that turned my stomach in a whole new way. She said David always talked about wanting someone more like her, that he'd say he chose the wrong sister, and that sometimes he made her feel like she was the one he truly loved. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because suddenly it all made sense. And in that split second, I understood. This wasn't just emotional betrayal. This was something darker, deeper. This was obsession disguised as love. And as I hung up the call, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was just another thread pulling tighter. And soon I would pull the whole web down. I knew I couldn't disappear forever. Not while the chaos I left behind was bleeding into other people's lives. But coming back, that wasn't an option either. Not yet. So I did what I'd learned to do. I stayed in the shadows. She planned it all, they would say one day. And they'd be right. Every move from here on had to be quiet, smart, surgical. I contacted a lawyer, an old friend who owed me a favor and didn't ask too many questions. We drafted a contract that made the payment to Rebecca legally binding under anonymity. A clause protected my identity. Another required David's full admission to rehab. No rehab, no more money, and if my name got out, the entire deal vanished. I built my safety into the paperwork. My silence was my answer, but it came with terms. Rebecca stuck to her word. She sold her house, moved states, and enrolled her kids in a new school. I watched it all from afar. Receipts, legal filings, even the U-Haul contract. Everything was documented. This time, I wasn't just a woman scorned. I was the architect of my own redemption. And David? He went to a rehab center in Arizona, or so the files said. But part of me knew better. I knew he'd lie again, manipulate the system, probably charm the therapists, just like he charmed me once. He thought I would stay, that I'd forgive like always. But that version of me no longer existed. She finally left, and this time she left blueprints behind. I wasn't running. I was rooting myself in power. Quietly, deeply. Just when I thought I had a handle on it, Rebecca sent me another message, a voicemail, her voice shaking. There's something I have to tell you. My heart pounded. I braced myself, and then it came, like a punch I didn't see coming. He used your money, she said, to buy a ring. Not for me, not for some new woman, for her, my own sister. I played it back, again and again. The rage didn't come all at once. It seeped in slowly like venom. He betrayed me, and now he was circling back, like a vulture, picking apart what was left of my past. But this time, he wasn't taking anything. Not my peace, not my name, and definitely not my silence. So I showed him the proof. I sent Rebecca a single photo, one I'd kept buried for years, a screenshot of his text to my sister. The ones where he called me cold and her softer, the ones that shattered me once. I found the messages long before I left, but I never responded. Until now. Now, I let those messages speak for themselves, let them echo through her conscience. She didn't reply, not for days. And when she finally did, it was only 4 words. I was deceived too. Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't. I stopped trying to make sense of who knew what. All I cared about now was the next step. Because if he thought this was over, he never saw it coming. I realized I couldn't just sit back and react anymore. It was time to move forward with intention, quietly, with purpose, with a plan that didn't just expose him, it dismantled him. And the first step? I needed evidence. Solid, undeniable, something no one could twist or gaslight away. I was done playing checkers. This was chess now, so I picked up the phone, not to call him, not to call her, but to hire someone who could see what I couldn't, follow his steps, collect the facts, and show the world who David really was, because the truth came out, and soon everyone would see it for themselves. I didn't want revenge out of rage. I wanted clarity. I wanted truth, documented, undeniable. So I found a private investigator named Jules. She was ex-military, sharp-eyed, and calm like still water. I told her everything, no sugarcoating. He broke me first, I said, and I want to know how deep the deception goes. She nodded once. No pity, just focus. She got to work. Within 2 weeks, I had files, dozens, photos, screenshots, audio clips. I opened the folder shaking, but I didn't cry, not this time, because now I was nothing to him, just a name on documents, a pawn he thought he played. But I held the board now, and what I saw, it went far beyond betrayal. It was criminal, calculated, cold. David had opened 2 offshore accounts under shell companies, one in the Caymans, one in Panama. He funneled over $600,000 in 3 years, money from joint investments, retirement savings, even life insurance withdrawals I didn't know existed. One policy caught my eye immediately, $5 million on my life, recently signed, forged signature. She exposed him, I thought, staring at the forged S. He didn't stop at money. He was still texting my sister, under a fake name now, but the tone hadn't changed. Flirty, manipulative. "You're the only one who ever really saw me," he wrote. Stories of betrayal began layering in my mind, like a twisted collage, and I saw it clearly. This wasn't a man who made a mistake. This was a man who built betrayal like architecture. The worst file was an audio clip. Him on the phone with a buddy, laughing, talking about a wild insurance plan if things ever got sticky. He joked about how disappearances pay better than divorces. "She's too predictable," he said. "She'd never do anything drastic." But guess what? She planned it all. And she wasn't predictable anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there with my laptop open, listening, scrolling, rereading. Betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It erases everything you thought was real. Every memory you once held close becomes suspect. I realized I was grieving a version of my life that never existed, but instead of drowning, I documented every page, every lie, every fake smile. I prepared 3 copies of the evidence, one for my lawyer, one locked in a safe, and one stored digitally under encryption, because nobody believed her when she first left. But now, I had proof. I didn't need anyone's permission to validate my pain. I had built a portfolio of truth, and it was time to use it wisely. Then came the surveillance footage. David meeting with a man I didn't recognize. They exchanged a black duffel bag. Money? Documents? I didn't know. But I knew one thing, for sure, he wasn't done. He was spiraling, making bigger, bolder moves, and soon he'd slip up, publicly. And when he did, I'd be ready. He never saw it coming. I sent a single message to Jules. "Follow the man in the red hat. I think he's the next domino." She replied within an hour. On it. That's all I needed. I wasn't just uncovering lies. I was building momentum, because truth isn't just revealed, it's constructed. And I was laying bricks in silence, one revelation at a time. And as I watched everything unfold, a thought echoed louder than the rest. So I showed him the proof. But soon, I'd show the world. I used to dream about the perfect confrontation, me walking in, calm and unshaken, while he panicked and fumbled for excuses. But when the time actually came, it felt colder, more surgical. I didn't need a dramatic scene. I needed precision. I flew back into the US under a different name, wearing a short auburn wig, sunglasses, and a heavy coat. No one recognized me. That was the point. Back home, I didn't go straight to our house. Instead, I rented a car, parked a block away, and just watched. The once pristine yard was overgrown. Packages piled up at the door. He looked thinner, unraveled. I stayed inside the rental and listened to voice recordings from my investigator. His calls had grown erratic. He was yelling at banks, swearing at creditors. He betrayed me, but he also betrayed his own false empire, and now it was collapsing. I saw 2 men approach the house that afternoon, one in a black suit, the other in jeans and an attitude. Debt collectors, they shouted. David didn't open the door. Instead, he screamed through the glass. The man in the suit just handed him an envelope and walked away. I watched it all unfold like a silent movie. My silence was my answer. He couldn't yell his way out of this one. I stayed 2 days in that car, observing, taking notes. I tracked every person who entered and left. I saw him toss out a laptop, shattered screen, broken keys, rage, desperation. The beautiful thing about truth is that it waits. It doesn't need to scream. It just lingers until it becomes undeniable. And David, he was surrounded by it, choked by it. Then came the knock on his door that made him flinch. It wasn't a creditor. It was a local officer with a court summons. Fraud, misuse of funds. He tried to talk his way out, arms flailing, voice raised, but she cried in silence while he forged her signature. Now, the law was doing the speaking for her. I knew I was close, but I didn't want just legal justice. I wanted emotional clarity. So I arranged a meeting with my lawyer, a notary, and David's accountant. We'd drop the final bomb together, but I wouldn't be in the room. I'd be behind the scenes, directing the show. Because she finally left wasn't just a statement, it was a strategy. The accountant brought out the books. The lawyer laid down the forged documents. And then they hit play. Audio recordings, bank transfers, messages. One by one. Boom, boom, boom. David broke down mid-meeting. "I was set up," he yelled. "This is a lie." But the truth came out, and he knew it. His face turned pale. The room grew quiet. No one comforted him. He tried calling me after that, over and over. Left voicemails. "Please, just let me explain." He begged her to come back, but she was no longer listening. The woman he lied to, manipulated, and underestimated, she no longer existed. I had become someone else entirely, someone stronger, someone free. I walked by our old house one last time, not to mourn it, but to remember, to take in the smell of wet grass and jasmine from the garden I once planted. I wasn't angry, I was ready, and as I walked past him, unnoticed, a quiet thought bloomed in my mind. When she was captured, she was scared, but now she was watching, documenting, reclaiming everything he stole, and with every step I took, a fire rose in me, because this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of the reckoning, and he never saw it coming. I always thought revenge had to be loud, explosive, messy, cinematic. But the real kind, it's quieter, sharper. It cuts deeper because it doesn't scream. It simply shows the truth. And in my case, the truth had teeth. So I planned something he couldn't ignore, a public unraveling, one that mirrored the way he broke me first, slowly, thoroughly, and with precision. I sent anonymous envelopes to every institution he ever used, his law firm, his alma mater, the charity he pretended to support. Inside, copies of the forged insurance documents, screenshots of messages, proof of stolen funds, the kind of exposure no rebranding could fix. She exposed him, and not with vengeance, but with clarity, like sunlight through stained glass, revealing every hidden flaw. I published my story through a pseudonym on a popular blog, a woman's journey of betrayal, manipulation, and rebirth. No names, no direct accusations, but everyone knew who it was, especially when I included a photo, blurred but familiar. A man in a luxury car with a woman who wasn't his wife. I found the messages. I had receipts, and people devoured every word. Suddenly, everyone had a story about David. Old co-workers, former clients, even a family friend. Stories of betrayal piled up. I wasn't alone. He had burned bridges everywhere. I had just lit the final match, and now people were watching. The fire with popcorn in hand. He deserves it, they said. About time, and I just watched. Calm, focused. He called again, left a message saying I was ruining his life. But what he didn't say was the part that mattered. He betrayed me, not just once, repeatedly, with malice, with calculation. I was deceived, yes, but I was no longer broken, just done, and that terrified him more than anything. One night I received a message from someone unexpected, his ex. She told me things I hadn't even uncovered, that she planned it all with him, the fake proposals, the investment scams, the fake tears. She had left him years ago, but carried the guilt. She wanted to help now. I let her, because this wasn't just my revenge anymore. It was a collective reckoning. Together, we built a timeline. Every lie, every trick, every woman he used. We cross-referenced his travel records with missing funds. We traced accounts to offshore havens. And then we handed everything to a journalist. An expose was coming. Not just a whisper on the internet, but a front-page story with names, dates, documents. So I showed him the proof, and the world would soon see it too. I wasn't hiding anymore. I booked a podcast appearance, still using my alias, my voice trembling at first, but growing steadier with each word. Silence was my answer, I said. But silence doesn't mean surrender. It means I was watching, preparing. Listeners flooded the comments with support. You're not alone. Thank you for saying what so many of us lived. And in that moment, I realized something strange. I didn't feel vengeance. I felt release, like the burden had shifted. Nobody believed her when she first spoke, but now millions were listening, and that changed everything. I knew I couldn't just disappear again. Not this time. Not after everything. He had to see me. He had to know that she finally left and didn't just walk away. She walked through the fire and came out unburned. So I returned, not with drama or chaos, just with truth. I wore my calm like armor and silence like a sword. He never saw it coming. The moment he opened the door, his face turned ghost white. He stumbled on his words, like his tongue forgot how to lie. And I stood there, steady. We need to talk, I said, stepping past him like I still belonged. There, for a second, he didn't move, like he was trying to figure out if I was real or just his guilt taking shape. But I was real, and I was ready. I laid the folder on the table, neatly. No threats, no yelling, just facts, bank statements, insurance fraud, screenshots of messages to my sister, every piece of the puzzle. And then I looked him in the eye and said it softly, so I showed him the proof. No screaming, no accusations, just the kind of cold truth that doesn't need volume to sting. He collapsed into the chair, hands shaking. You don't understand, he whispered. I was desperate. But desperation doesn't write fake policies. It doesn't flirt with my sister. It doesn't gamble away my savings. I was nothing to him until I became a threat. And now, with the walls closing in, he was the one gasping for air. I didn't flinch when he begged, didn't break when he cried, because he begged her to come back before. He made promises before, but he also broke me first. And this time, I didn't come to heal him. I came to end it. I told him the lawyer would be in touch. I told him the article was already scheduled. I told him my silence was over. And still, he tried. He reached for the same tricks. Guilt, charm, fake tears. We can fix this. But there was no we anymore. There hadn't been for years. I was never his partner. I was a prop in his performance. And now the stage was crumbling. She exposed him, and he didn't even know what act he was in. He lunged for the folder, but I pulled it back. You don't get to control the ending, I said. You had your chance. It was the first time I saw true fear in his eyes. Not fear of me, fear of truth. The truth came out, and it didn't care how many lies he wrapped around it. It just kept cutting deeper. He slumped down, defeated. I turned to leave, and in that final moment, I whispered what I'd waited years to say. My silence was my answer. He didn't follow. He didn't shout. He just sat there, alone, surrounded by the pieces of the life he built on betrayal. And for once, I wasn't the one crying in silence. He was, but even then, I knew it wasn't over. Not completely, because when people like him lose control, they get reckless, dangerous. And though he was cornered, a desperate man is still unpredictable. So, I had one more step to take. The moment I left that house, I knew I couldn't just trust fate to finish the job. People like him don't fade quietly. They fight to keep the mask on, and I wasn't about to let he betrayed me turn into I was deceived again. So I followed, through every legal step, every financial block, every public truth. I lit the match and let it burn with precision. First, the press release. Not revenge porn, not slander, just the truth. Documented and signed. Stories of betrayal don't need to scream to be heard. They just need evidence. And mine was airtight. Within 48 hours, the article was trending. Whispers turned into roars. His name lost value. His business partners backed out. His mask shattered in front of the same crowd that once cheered him on. Then came the legal avalanche. Fraud charges, insurance violations, misuse of marital assets. I didn't need to scream. The courts did it for me. I stayed behind the scenes, like a director with the perfect script. She planned it all, not out of hate, but out of clarity. Revenge wasn't chaos, it was control, and I had it now. And still, he tried to crawl back. Flowers, emails, voice messages that swung from sorrow to rage to manipulation. You'll regret this. We had something real. They won't believe you. But nobody believed her, until the receipts hit the light. And now, she cried in silence no more. He did. Alone, bitter, powerless. I started seeing myself again. Not the woman who waited, begged, doubted, but the woman who disappeared, healed, and rebuilt. I traveled, I painted, I read, I laughed again. Real, uncontaminated laughter. I stopped looking over my shoulder. I stopped checking who he was with, because I finally realized he thought I would stay, but he never deserved that kind of grace. I bought a small villa in Portugal, overlooking cliffs that meet the sea. It's peaceful, safe, mine. And every time the waves crash, I think of that night, the one where I stood outside a cabin, bourbon in hand, ready to surprise a man who was already planning my disappearance. And I smile, because he never saw it coming. Sometimes the past sends postcards, a mutual friend, a news article, a random memory. But I don't reply. My silence was my answer then. It still is now. And if you're reading this, maybe you've been there too. Betrayed, broken, blamed. Maybe you've been told you were too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. Let me tell you, you weren't. You were just surrounded by people too little to handle your worth. And now it's your turn to go quiet, to go still, to plan it all, to rise, not with noise, but with undeniable proof that you survived the worst. And you didn't just survive, you rewrote the ending, with your name in bold, your story in truth, and your future in peace. Because betrayal may have knocked you down, but revenge, when done with wisdom, lifts you higher than you've ever stood. And just like that, the woman who once vanished, she finally left for good. But this time, not running. This time, leading.